Some battles don't end on the battlefield. Amanda had fought for USA, faced dangers most people couldn't imagine. But nothing had prepared her for this, the relentless fight to survive in the real world. Amanda tightened her apron as she cleared the last table of the night, her body aching from another exhausting shift. She had faced war zones, survived high-pressure missions, but nothing had prepared her for this, the slow, relentless battle of survival in the civilian world. She glanced at the clock. Past midnight. With a tired sigh, she unfastened her apron, folded it over her arm, and grabbed her bag. Tonight was just like every other night. Long hours, low pay, and the constant worry of making ends meet. Her husband had vanished months ago, running from the loan sharks after losing everything in crypto. Now they were after her. Amanda didn't scare easily. She had taken enemy fire, fought through ambushes, and faced life-or-death situations without flinching. But none of that prepared her for the terror of unpaid bills and hungry children. The city streets were empty as she walked toward the bus stop, the glow of streetlights flickering over damp pavement. Rain threatened to fall, the air thick with moisture. Then, a noise behind her. A slow, deliberate knock echoed from the back door of the cafe. Amanda froze, her grip tightening around her bag strap. She knew that knock. Slow. Intentional. A warning. She turned slowly, her heartbeat steady but alert. A man stood in the dim light, leaning against the doorframe with a smirk. Dark leather jacket, slicked back hair. The kind of confidence that came from knowing he had power over people like her. "Miss Carter," he drawled. "We need to talk." Amanda didn't move. "I told you, I just need more time." He sighed dramatically, stepping closer. "That's what you said last week. Our patience is running thin." Amanda's jaw clenched. She had faced bigger threats than this, but the difference was, now she wasn't the only one at risk. "Look, I'll get the money," she said, voice firm. "I just need more time," he finished for her, chuckling. "That's not how this works, sweetheart." He tilted his head, studying her. "You're a fighter, I can see that. So let me give you some advice. Start fighting for yourself. Because next time we won't be talking." He slipped a folded piece of paper into her hand, a final notice. Then he walked off into the night. Amanda stood still, the paper clenched in her fingers, her breath slow and controlled. She knew this feeling, the quiet before the battle. But this time she wasn't sure she had enough fight left. The rain started as a light drizzle, dampening the pavement as Amanda walked toward the bus stop. She pulled her jacket tighter around herself, her mind racing with thoughts of bills, debt, and the ever-present threat of those men. Her fingers unconsciously tightened around the folded piece of paper in her pocket. A final notice. A countdown to disaster. She was used to pressure. Years in the military had taught her to stay calm under fire, to adapt, to survive. But civilian life was proving to be an entirely different kind of war. One where the enemy wasn't visible but just as deadly. A sharp screech of tires shattered the silence. Amanda's head snapped up just in time to see a red sports car swerve violently through the rain, its tires skidding against the slick asphalt. Time seemed to slow. The vehicle spun out of control, careening toward the sidewalk. The headlights flashed once, then, crash. The front end of the car slammed into a lamppost, crumpling like a tin can. Metal twisted, glass shattered, and steam billowed from the engine. For a moment, everything was still. Amanda didn't hesitate. Her training kicked in before she could think. She sprinted toward the wreck, rain-soaked pavement slick beneath her boots. Reaching the driver's side, she yanked at the door handle. It wouldn't budge. The impact had bent the frame. Inside, a man sat slumped over the steering wheel, unconscious. Amanda's pulse quickened. She reached through the broken window, careful of the jagged glass. "Hey, can you hear me?" No response. Her hand found his wrist. His pulse was weak, erratic. Amanda scanned his face. Middle-aged, expensive suit, a watch that probably cost more than her apartment. He smelled like wealth, like the kind of man who had never had to worry about a bill in his life. And yet here he was, helpless. She forced the door again, this time using her full weight. It groaned, then popped open just enough for her to grab his arm. A groggy moan escaped his lips as she pulled him out. His body was heavier than she expected, his movements sluggish. Heart attack. It had to be. Amanda Carter, former military, she muttered to herself, checking his breathing. If you die on me, I swear I'll be pissed. Her hands moved instinctively, clearing his airway, adjusting his position. She barely registered the sirens in the distance. Paramedics. Amanda exhaled. Help was coming. But she had no idea. This rescue had just changed her life. The hospital waiting room was cold and sterile, the scent of antiseptic thick in the air. Amanda sat in a plastic chair, her soaked jacket draped over her lap. Her hands were still shaking. The rain outside had picked up, hammering against the large windows. But inside, everything was eerily quiet, aside from the steady beeping of heart monitors and the occasional murmur of nurses passing by. She had saved a man's life tonight. And yet she didn't even know his name. Her gaze drifted toward the emergency room doors, where they had rushed him in over an hour ago. Was he even still alive? A part of her told her to leave. She wasn't family. She wasn't even a friend. She should go home, check on her kids, figure out how she was going to handle the mess her life had become. But something kept her glued to that chair. Maybe it was duty. Maybe it was something else. The doors to the ER suddenly swung open, breaking her from her thoughts. Two men in black suits entered the waiting area. Amanda's instincts kicked in immediately. Their posture was too controlled, their movements too precise. They weren't here for medical reasons. And then, one of them looked directly at her. Her stomach tightened. The taller of the two men approached. His gaze was sharp, assessing. Miss Carter. Amanda's spine straightened. They knew her name. She eyed them cautiously, her mind already running through worst-case scenarios. Who's asking? The man pulled a sleek black business card from his jacket. We work for William Bloom, the man you saved tonight. Amanda glanced at the card but didn't take it. Is he okay? He's stable, the man said. And he wants to see you. Amanda hesitated. But her fingers curled around the edges of her jacket. She had expected to walk away from this night and never think about it again. But now it felt like something much bigger was unfolding. She studied the man in front of her, then the one standing a few feet away, silent, watching. Something about this wasn't right. But she wasn't the type to walk away from a fight. Taking a deep breath, she stood. Fine, she said. Take me to him. The man nodded and gestured for her to follow. As they walked toward the private wing, Amanda had the sinking feeling that whatever she had just stepped into, there was no turning back. Amanda followed the two men down a quiet hospital corridor, her boots clicking softly against the tile floor. Everything about this felt off. The men in suits, the way the nurses moved aside when they passed, the eerie silence of this section of the hospital. Who exactly was William Bloom? The taller man, who had introduced himself as Mason Reed, led the way. The other, Ryan Hale, followed closely behind her, his presence almost too quiet. They were security, that much was obvious. Finally, they stopped in front of a private room. Mason knocked once, then pushed the door open. Go ahead, he said. Amanda hesitated but stepped inside. The man she had saved was sitting up in bed, his piercing gray eyes locking onto her the moment she entered. Even in a hospital gown, he carried himself with quiet authority. William Bloom. His hair was streaked with silver, his jaw sharp and clean-shaven despite everything he'd been through. He looked like the kind of man who was used to being in control. Amanda crossed her arms. So you're alive. A small smirk tugged at the corner of his lips. Thanks to you. He gestured toward the chair beside the bed. Sit. Amanda didn't move. I'm good standing. His expression didn't change. You don't trust me. Should I? William studied her for a moment, then nodded toward the window. Do you know who I am? Besides the guy whose car almost killed me? That smirk again. I run one of the largest private investment firms in the country. But that's not why you're here. Amanda narrowed her eyes. Then why am I here? William leaned forward slightly. You saved my life tonight. And I don't believe in debts going unpaid. Amanda scoffed. So what? You gonna send me a gift basket? Something better. He reached for a folder on the bedside table and slid it toward her. That's all your outstanding debt. Every late payment, every collection notice, every single dollar you owe. Paid in full. Amanda's breath hitched. This had to be a joke. Her fingers hovered over the folder before she snapped herself out of it. Why? What's the catch? William's gaze was steady. You're a soldier. You know what it's like to have people after you. Amanda stiffened. He knew. You have a problem, he continued. And I can solve it. Her mind was racing. And in return, William smiled, the kind of smile that meant trouble. In return, you work for me. Silence. Amanda stared at him, trying to process what he was saying. Work for you? Doing what? Security. Protection. Something tells me you can handle it. Amanda let out a dry laugh. I'm a waitress. You were a soldier first, he countered smoothly. She shook her head. I don't even know you. You'll have time to learn. Amanda looked at the folder again, the weight of her debts suffocating her like a chain. Was this crazy? Absolutely. But was it her way out? She exhaled slowly, meeting his gaze. I'll think about it. William's smirk returned. Take your time. But don't take too long. But something told Amanda. This offer wasn't going to stay on the table forever. Amanda sat at her tiny kitchen table, staring at the folder William Bloom had given her. It was all there. Every late notice. Every overdue bill. Every reminder of how badly she was drowning. Her kids were asleep in the next room, curled up under thin blankets. The fridge barely had enough food to last the week. And in a few days she'd have debt collectors knocking on her door again. William's voice echoed in her head. In return, you work for me. She leaned back, rubbing her hands over her face. It was insane. It was dangerous. And yet, it was her only way out. She grabbed her phone and scrolled through old messages. There were none from her husband. Not a single word since the day he left. Her eyes landed on one particular text from a number she didn't recognize. We haven't forgotten about you, Carter. Tick-tock. Her grip tightened on the phone. She could handle threats. But could she handle her kids being caught in the crossfire? The answer was simple. No. Amanda exhaled sharply, pushing the chair back. She grabbed her coat, the folder, and walked out into the night. It was time to get some answers. The address William's security team had given her led to a skyscraper in the heart of the city. Amanda stood outside for a long moment, watching the way the lights stretched high into the night sky. It was a world she didn't belong in. She squared her shoulders and stepped inside. The receptionist barely looked up as she approached. Name? Amanda Carter. Pause. Then, as if expecting her, the woman nodded. Take the elevator to the top floor. Amanda rode the elevator in silence, her fingers gripping the folder so tightly the edges curled. She was about to make a deal with a man she barely knew. But if it meant protecting her kids, so be it. The office was exactly what she expected. Floor-to-ceiling windows, sleek leather furniture, and an air of quiet power. William Bloom sat behind a glass desk, waiting. You came. Amanda threw the folder onto his desk. This doesn't make us even. William leaned back, watching her. No, it doesn't. She crossed her arms. You want me to work for you? Fine. But I have conditions. A flicker of amusement crossed his face. I'm listening. First, my kids come first. If this job puts them in danger, I walk. Understood. Second, I don't take orders blindly. If I do this, I do it my way. William smirked. I'd expect nothing less. Amanda exhaled. This was it. She reached across the desk and shook his hand. A simple gesture, but one that changed everything. Amanda had spent her entire life fighting battles, on the front lines, in back alleys, inside her own home. But this was different. She wasn't just fighting to survive anymore. She was stepping into a world she didn't understand, a world that could swallow her whole if she wasn't careful. As she walked into William Bloom's headquarters, she had one thing on her mind. How far was she really willing to go? Mason Reed, Bloom's head of security, met her in the lobby. He looked just as unreadable as before. Didn't think you'd actually take the job, he said. Neither did I, Amanda admitted. Mason gave a small smirk. Come on. We've got work to do. They rode the elevator in silence. This isn't a normal security job, Mason finally said. You're not just protecting Bloom. You're stepping into a fight you don't even know exists yet. Amanda arched an eyebrow. Then maybe you should fill me in. Mason's gaze was sharp. We'll see if you can handle it first. The moment they stepped onto the executive floor, Amanda could feel the power in the air. Men in suits. Women in designer heels. Conversations whispered over expensive coffee. She didn't belong here. But she would make it work. Mason led her into a large conference room where William Bloom was waiting. "Welcome to the team, Amanda," Bloom said smoothly. She sat down, folding her arms. "So, what exactly am I protecting you from?" Bloom leaned forward. "You're not protecting me." Amanda frowned. "Then what the hell am I doing here?" Mason slid a file across the table. Amanda hesitated before flipping it open. The first thing she saw? A surveillance photo of herself. Her pulse spiked. "What the?" Bloom's face was unreadable. "Someone's been watching you." Amanda's grip tightened on the paper. "Why?" Mason's voice was grim. "Because whoever came after me, they might be coming after you next." Amanda let out a slow breath, her military instincts kicking in. "Stay calm. Stay focused." She closed the file and met Bloom's gaze. "I want everything. Names, details, who's behind this." "You'll get it," Bloom said. "But first I need to know, are you really in?" Amanda thought of her kids. Her past. The debts she no longer had to worry about. She wasn't naive. This wasn't just a job. It was a war. And war? That was something she knew how to handle. She reached for the file again. "I'm in." Bloom smiled. "Then let's get to work."